Now, our first panel discussion is on technology and AI in supply chain sustainability. Our panel is led by Reda Shukor, partner of Southeast Asia Sustainable Supply Chain, PwC Malaysia, as our moderator for today. And Reda is joined by our three panelists comprising of Umang Varma, Head Tech Solutions Hub APAC Oracle, Lucas Chu Yi Lim, Executive Director and Country Head of Transaction Banking UOB Malaysia, and Tengku Azrul bin Tengku Azhar, Director, Digital Regulatory and Sustainability, Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC. Please put your hands together for them and give them a warm welcome.
Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, we'd like to convey our great gratitude to the organizers of SBKL 24 for inviting us on this panel and giving us the opportunity to share some of our insights. Now, thank you for joining us today for what promises to be a compelling and insightful discussion. I'm delighted to welcome the panel on technology and AI in sustainable supply chain. Today we will explore not only the fundamentals of sustainable supply chain as well as how companies and the market faring with its implementation, but how technology and AI can further enhance and accelerate sustainable supply chain practices. This can take many forms, ranging from using dashboards and trackers to measure emissions to utilizing AI to enhance transparency within the supply chain. These advancements bring a multitude of benefits, from increased level of transparency, cost savings, and better awareness of risks within the supply chain. Our expert speakers from various backgrounds will provide us with a deep dive into intersection of technology, AI, financing, and sustainability within a company's supply chain, and also share their perspective on how these forces are converging to drive positive change. We'll also be touching on various challenges that these companies face implementing sustainable supply chain, ranging from lack of awareness of sustainable supply chains and the technology that can be implemented to the challenging costs associated with transforming a company's supply chain. With that, let me ask the first question to Umang. Sustainable supply chain is a growing topic regionally as well as in Malaysia. What is the current level of maturity in Malaysia in relation to the adoption of supply chain? And a follow-up question to that, Umang, how has technology been enabling the growth of sustainable supply chain practices?
Thanks, Reda, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. I'm seeing an increased amount of conversations happening in Malaysia on sustainable supply chains. In fact, there have been a couple of very, very interesting implementations that I was fortunate enough to be a part of in sustainable supply chain, where we used combination of IoT, combination of AI, both traditional as well as Gen AI, in driving sustainable supply chain. This has happened with both SMEs, which is very, very heartening, and also with some of the larger enterprises, and I'm happy to talk about it separately. So yes, it's becoming a more mainstream conversation. There are some very interesting implementations that are happening, and more companies are showing interest in sustainable supply chains in Malaysia.
Thanks, Umang. Very interesting, right? It's not just the big boys, the large corporations, but we're seeing more and more interest and adoption from the SMEs, which is a large sort of driver of the economy in Malaysia. If I can just ask Jazza the same question, in terms of the current level of maturity, given MDEC has visibility across a large part of the technology industry, what is the level of maturity in Malaysia in relation to adopting sustainable supply chain practices, and how has technology helped to enable that?
I think the level of maturity, I think, is progressing when it comes to Malaysia. The value of adopting sustainability has yet to be taken seriously when it comes to SME. So I think the recent survey by Alliance Bank, only about 28% of SMEs adopted sustainability in their practices. So while high-performing company PLC that has to report to Bursa, the Bursa and Security Commission, they look at that very highly. So they want everyone to adopt sustainability, especially in scope 3, right? But most of the SME, there is a room for growth. I think that's the opportunity here that we can take up to promote more sustainability practice in the supply chain. So for MDEC, I think we believe technology is a critical factor in solving this issue. If you look at COVID, I think that was jokingly said that COVID is the best CIO for businesses, where they digitize the business processes due to that. I think when it comes to sustainability and ESG, the regulation will be part of that transformation, where most companies require the reporting has to adopt a certain standard. So the room for growth is there, but yeah, we yet to look at the progress of the sustainability practices in supply chain.
Thank you, Cik Azhar. I think I like how you mentioned that COVID has given us a big lesson where technology is a big enabler to drive changes in behavior. In this case, technology can be used to unlock the potential of sustainable supply chain practices. Fantastic. Lucas, what do you share as your thoughts? What is the level of maturity if you look at the customer base within UOB as well as the business partners that you interact? Has technology been a big part of the growth?
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, from a banking point of view, right, it's actually very interesting that this panel that we actually have, because to us, supply chain, sustainability, and AI is actually three different things. But we are actually putting all of them together. Right, first, I talk about maybe sustainability first. I think for like the other panelists has mentioned, right, mostly of the bigger corporates are ready, or they have certain sustainability or ESG structure in place, probably because of being forced to also, right? But they about majority, 80% or so of them are ready, right, with certain ESG structures and so on. But also surprisingly, from these large corporates, supply chain is somehow actually behind, right? From a study that we've known, only about 50 plus % of the companies, large companies, actually have a supply chain kind of structure in place, right? And many of these actually will also happen because of the recent situation, right? Because previously, a couple of years ago, when corporates talk about supply chain, they probably thinking about doing a CSR. You say, oh, my suppliers are SMEs, I need to help them. It's coming from a CSR point of view. But recently, because of or not so recent, maybe during Trump's time, starting with the trade war between US and China, and recently with the war in Ukraine and the disruption in the disruption to the supply chain because of the Middle East issue. So people need to think about supply chain seriously so that they can actually get supplies, right, for our business they have, right, sustain or consistently and so on. Right? So supply chain became only recently that that is it. And AI that came in, right, that's the recent buzzword, right? That AI. So putting all three together, right? I would say that it's still a very infancy stage of putting all three together. Each sector of this actually have their own level of maturity, and putting them together probably is still early days.
Absolutely, I think that's a very apt description, right? The maturity in general is still probably at the infancy stage.
Yeah.
Not just to adopt the sustainable supply chain perspective, but also to embed that technology element to that. And I like how you also mentioned how, despite the growth that we're seeing in ESG, there's still the perception or the misinformation or the connotation where ESG or sustainable supply chain practices is just CSR, but it's beyond that. It's actually impacting the value of corporations and organizations. Great, there's a lot of alignment there, despite the different backgrounds that you represent. Umang, can I just ask you the second question? What are the practices that you're seeing in terms of either processes or even the technologies that have been implemented to really drive the pursuit of better sustainable supply chain practices? What are you seeing out there?
Look, I think it's a combination of multiple technologies coming together and also financial incentives coming together, right? Because for SMEs, for example, till the economic incentives are not there, obviously the adoption may not happen. So I remember we're working with one SME here. I'll give you a very practical, realistic example of how I've seen one SME do it and get financial value out of it, right? So this is one SME in Malaysia. He rents equipment out to end customers. These could be generators, HVACs, So he rents equipment out. Now, what he needs to do is he's also responsible for the uptime of that equipment, which means he also needs to do the fuel top-ups. Now, every day he would go and do a fuel run. So to each of the factories where he's got equipment, do a fuel run and do a fuel top-up, which obviously you can imagine is not ESG and carbon efficient. From a cost perspective as well to the SME, it's not very efficient. So what they did was, very simple thing, they put in small IoT sensors which check the fuel levels in your machines. Okay, that's it. These sensors are very cheap. You can track them using some very simple open source technologies to check the fuel levels. Now, instead of doing daily runs, he needs to do only targeted fuel runs where the machinery is running out of fuel. So that way he saved a lot of fuel, a lot of carbon emissions. Plus, financially, it is much more beneficial to the SME. So I'm seeing successful implementations come out when there is a confluence of economic incentives, when there is a confluence of multiple technologies, right? Another quick example for a large air conditioner seller or air conditioner manufacturer in ASEAN. Okay, same thing. Now, obviously, what are the incentives for them to become ESG efficient, right? Beyond the basic reporting. So the economic incentive we built for them was that rather than selling air conditioners, as a one-time cost, you can sell them as cooling by the hour. So pay by the minute or pay per use. How you do that is using IoT sensors. So that increases the financial viability if you selling more air conditioners because they're more affordable. To the consumers, right? The IoT sensors will also tell you when your ACs are running at suboptimal levels, which means they're not as carbon efficient as they need to be. Therefore, immediately an alert will go to you, the consumer, and to the service agent saying that this air conditioner needs to be fixed. So you see there's financial incentive for the manufacturer, there is financial incentive for the customer, there's a new financial model. So using the combination of simple technologies, right? Basic IoT sensors, basic IoT technology, not very GPU compute intensive, you can make a real change. Right? So those are a couple of examples that I have seen.
It's high impact as well. I like how
Yes.
the benefits that you're seeing, specifically from the financial incentives part, is actually shared across the value chain. It's not just the pocket of the entire ecosystem. And there's also the social impact perspective
Exactly.
as well. Cik Asad, what do you think? In terms of, from MDEC's perspective, with the amount of companies that we have in Malaysia from a digital standpoint, what are they doing well in terms of the processes, technologies that they have adopted, and what benefits that you're seeing?
I think from MDEC point of view, we support the use of technology, especially when it comes to emerging tech, right? So we talk about AI, IoT, blockchain and whatnot. During the welcoming remarks by my CEO this morning, he did mention about one project under MDEC Catalytic program where we do introduce IoT in farming. One specific example here is chili farming, where it helped 550 farmers to increase yield when it comes to usage of pesticide, fertilizer and whatnot, right? So as what Umar mentioned earlier, the use of technology exists from from every facet of supply chain, right? From supplier until consumer. So that being said, we are encouraging company to start using technology in the supply chain, and with technology, we are looking at increased efficiency, the one that I mentioned earlier on chili farming. We have improved transparency for better tracking when it comes to carbon, right? Cost saving, and then optimized logistic. And one thing good about using AI, you can do predictive maintenance and predictive analysis, right? There's one, I listened to one use case from one prominent fried chicken restaurant where they can predict their supply chain to say they can order how many kilos of chicken to come to a certain branches, because they can predict by month of August they're going to sell X amount. So rather than they just doing a traditional forecasting, right? They use AI. They know how many chicken that they need to order and reducing their wastage. So that is from a typical usage of technology. But now what MDEC is looking at is to get more and more companies, the digital company, to come in to propose their proposal, to propose the solution to MDEC to help other company to get into ESG journey. If you look at the company outside at the foyer, we have the company like Carbon GPT. He did do some very good demonstration just now. You need to improve something, you need to have baseline, right? For an SME company that don't really want to spend getting 5 consultants in to look at how many scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, right? They can use the baseline from the likes of Carbon GPT to look at, this is my baseline for 2024. So by 2027, we're going to reduce X amount of percentage based on that. So it is easier for smaller company to get into this journey. And there is another one company, Sustainx, where they look at all the report that they have, all the ESG reporting report, the standard that they have. So you can just go to those platforms and start putting your number into the report, and they will help you. How can you go into this journey, start reporting, make sure you're making your supply chain more sustainable. And then there is one, that's Sustainx, right? So I would like to repeat earlier my call. We would like more and more companies to start and talk to us. How can you offer your services in getting people to be more sustainable, to be more ESG ready?
Thank you for sharing that. I think on top of the many good things that you mentioned, I'll certainly think twice whenever I have my fried chicken next time and think about, the kind of optimization that has gone behind producing the chicken. But certainly, great point about using technology to drive transparency, increase efficiency, and I like how you also touched on the point where now there's a lot of platforms for SMEs or anyone really to get access to. It's more accessible now, more affordable now for us to do that baselining and to get some support. If you think about 5-6 years ago, maybe that sort of platform and support may not have existed, or is perhaps not financially viable for people to access to. Lucas, maybe around on the same topic as well. What Azhar mentioned, I liked how he focused on the process and technology and the importance of optimizing from the bank's perspective, from financial services perspective. Same question, but do you see an element of AI within supply chain that focuses a bit more on risks, perhaps?
I think that I want to go back a little bit on the blockchain, because I think that was quite interesting. Right? I think for blockchain, for example, that using blockchain in the banking environment, and because of banks, we normally deal a lot with finance, right? In the financial world. And as you know, in the financial world, every invoices, every delivery order and so on, a lot of papers. Right? And a lot of reconciliation. I think blockchain as a technology has helped tremendous in this area, right? So that you actually cut down on all these papers, increase traceability and things, right? And where with the enhancement from blockchain technology to AI, where I think AI will come in terms of helping in productivity, and so is that one is that the data analytics part, right? Because there are so many of this information that is actually in the financing system, right? In an accounting system, using AI to analyze, right? So that's one part. The other part is actually AI could help in terms of in the supply chain is for sourcing of materials, right? With using AI that you can actually then pre-filter certain data and so on that certain people who have maybe more accurate in terms of their ESG reporting and so on. So AI would actually be able to help in that area. Yeah.
Thanks, Lucas. Well, we'll stick with you for a moment as we come back here. What are the top challenges that you see when it comes to adopting, well, there's a two-part question, right? Adopting not just sustainable supply chain practices, but really embracing technology to make it happen. What are you seeing out there?
I think first thing is cost. All this AI technology and so on is costly, right? Is an additional cost to it, and you will not be able to see the return, right, in a short period of time. Although in the long term, it's actually a lot of benefits, but in a short period of time, when you actually need to do quarterly reporting and so on, it is going to be a cost. It's not going to be able to see the benefit. So that will be something that people will look at, right? I think during the chat just now when we're doing preparation, it was mentioned that, if there's a budget constraint, the first thing that you take off is all this ESG technology, you cut it off first, right? They never cut the boss salary. Right? But they cut all these things first. So cost is one element. The other one, I think that is also the entry, right? Is that, if, to be honest, right? If it's not forced, right, because of your customers or someone or regulators that force on ESG, nobody wants to do it because it's very costly, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, right? But because you have no choice, you need to do, right? So I think that's another, and like what you said, the willingness to it. We are seeing more and more people who are willing to do it voluntarily, but it still takes time for this to happen. Yeah.
That's exactly a great point. You mentioned about cost being that hurdle, and also the nature of the market is a bit of a carrot versus the stick perspective, right? What's in it for them? And if it's not, then it's just about regulatory.
Example, right? If you are exporter, you want to go to Europe, right? And if you are not having a ESG structure or you comply to certain regulation, you can't. So that's because of the demand side, right? And as a supplier, you need to meet that regulation. So you have no choice but to go in.
Is the new cost of doing business, of compliance as well. Is there, on top of this two perspective, are there additional challenges that you're seeing in the market? Perhaps something to do with readiness of data in terms of to leverage the technology? Is that something of concern?
Yeah, if you talk about data, I think the readiness of data doesn't really apply only for sustainable supply chain, but it cut across. When you start talking about AI, the first foundation of AI is data. When you're talking about sustainable data center, sustainable supply chain as well, you need to look at what do you mean by sustainable. What's the number that you need to start with? What's the baseline, right? So data availability is one thing, because I think it boils down to resistance to change. It's human, right? Change is not in their nature. When you start talking to sustainable supply chain, where Post-Malaysia started changing their mode of vehicle to certain area from the normal ICE to electric vehicle, when fleet of operators starting to change to EV, people are saying that why we should change to EV, when government start promoting EV as one of the mode of transportation for last mile, right? So again, the question is, are we ready to change? But again, I have to agree with Lucas, when you are exporter going to Europe, you have to change because that's the regulatory requirement. That is something that forcing human to change their behavior. I think that's something good. When you want to change, at the juncture of change, you need to have your data ready. You need to be very sure about your costing, right? You need to be very sure about the uncertainty in technology investment. Because you invest X amount of ringgit today, you don't know whether in 2-3 years time, what's the return. So that's the challenges as well. So yeah, I have to agree with you. Data is one thing, but getting people into technology is the change that's required to start everything.
That's a very common issue, isn't it? If you don't embrace this change, you get pretty much left behind, especially if you're going to be involved in other markets globally. Okay. Umang, I just wanted to ask your thoughts. Where do you think the future of sustainable supply chain will be? There's a lot of innovation over the recent years. How do you think this will evolve and shape up in the future?
I think two or three early trends that I'm looking at. One, he spoke about the data. People have good intentions and they want to be more ESG compliant. They're struggling with data availability. So, for example, if I'm an automotive OEM, right? I've worked with automotive OEMs. Typically, if you want your entire supply chain to be ESG compliant, there are at least 7 levels of suppliers and sub-suppliers that you have to look at. So it is not just your own ESG compliance, but also for your sub-suppliers. And second thing is consumers are becoming more aware. We were just talking, people in my generation wouldn't think about these things. Next generation, which is now graduating out of colleges and schools, will start looking at their purchasing decisions will be made on ESG compliance. Second trend, right? Is this car more fuel efficient than this car? Are these garments more, the garment manufacturer is following labor safe practices or not? People are thinking about this, right? So that's a second trend. So therefore, from a technology perspective, I think companies are beginning to understand that they'll have to start working with their core application providers, which will give them base ESG reporting as part of their application. Which means if you buy an ERP today and you roll out the same ERP to your sub-suppliers, all 7 levels, it will have basic ESG data capture available in your ERP. Because for you to do that as a project, as my friend was saying, the ROI may not be visible. It's a multi-year project, the ROI is not visible. So the big trend that I'm seeing is application providers are coming up with technologies to capture ESG data across the entire supply chain, give you a measure of how ESG compliant you are. Second is consumers are becoming more ESG aware, are basing purchasing decisions on this. So I'll end it there. There are many more, but I think these 2 are sufficient.
Consumers are getting more sophisticated. It's going to be demand-driven, as what Lucas mentioned as well. And I like how you also acknowledge the fact that this journey is not something for one organization to take on the world themselves. There needs to be some form of partnership, a collaboration, either with financiers or in the case what you mentioned is the application providers as well. So very, very strong statement there. Lucas, it would be good to get your thoughts as well. How do you think the concept or the world of sustainable supply chain will be in the future? What's in store for us, really?
I think if you look at the entire world, right, maybe even before the world, let's look at Malaysia. One thing that is going to happen that forced everybody to really look at this seriously in terms of supply chain and some part of sustainability is e-invoicing, right? You have no choice, it's coming, right? So you better get ready. And while you are getting ready for e-invoicing, you are going to make a lot of investment to your IT and investment and technology and so on. So take that same right, and put in maybe consideration of how do you actually also meet the ESG requirements in there, right? So that you don't spend twice, right? You spend one time, try to cover cover more areas, right? E-invoicing. And for the world, right, there is actually something that is similar, is something that is inevitable, right? Is coming is carbon tax, emission tax. These are things that is going to come, right, sooner or later. So take the opportunity to really invest in those. So for these things that actually you cannot avoid, it will definitely come. So I think it's for time for people to really look seriously into putting up a plan, right? You may not need to invest heavily, but at least you have a plan. How to start, where to start, right? And take baby steps towards that. When it comes, at least you are already on a journey. You already know what actually need to be there, right? I'm actually glad to see so many people here today, right? Because this is one of the baby steps, right? To gain knowledge, right? Is actually one very important steps as well. Yeah.
Very important, Lucas. I think, once again, well done to the organizers for giving us this platform to share this perspective. Very strong message. It is inevitable, right? The demand from the market for organizations, big or small, to adopt sustainable supply chain practices is certainly going to be a prerequisite. I like how you said, start now, right? Build baby steps. You won't have a perfect solution now, but you can have you can plan towards it. So taking that step. Chiesa, what do you think? Where do you see sustainable supply chain evolving in the future, or what's in store for us?
Sorry.
Sorry? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I think when we're talking about future of sustainable supply chain, right? Yes, Lucas did mention about inevitable, the things will be coming, but what we can see now before the future start coming in is the onboarding. The big PLCs getting their supplier to be trained on what do they meant by sustainable supply chain. Is beyond deploying technology, right? For you to understand. So hence, the start has to come from those big players to start adopting sustainable supply chain, getting and talking to the right player. We talk about that, but the spillover effect coming from this sustainable supply chain, people are talking about sustainability, ESG and whatnot, is the creation of new generation and creation of new job. We call it green job, right? The team has prepared for me that carbon neutral future could add between 3 to 5.3 trillion to ASEAN GDP by 2050. By having this projection, they're looking at investment in technology, AI-enabled climate tech, clean tech are expected to generate up to 66 million new jobs in this region. I think we have to be ready in getting the future talent to be in this, because again, what is technology if it's without the talent that's required? I spoke to Verma just now. He's talking about very deep tech, cloud engineering. The first question that I want to ask him is, do we have talent in this region? So yeah, that is getting ourselves ready, the industry ready, the sector ready in embracing this new technology, right? And one thing that I think it is less technology, but it is a bit more important, is to emphasize on circularity. We need to look out at how can we reduce waste from all section of the supply chain, from supplier up to consumer. We're talking about reusable packaging. People like Amazon started to teach their Amazon box to become in more easy to recycle packages. So those are the small and baby step that we can take now in order for us to get ready for more future innovation.
Thank you for that. I think that's consistent acknowledgement that there is growth, but there's more to be done. But we certainly need to take some baby steps towards that. Before we go to the Q&A, I think one last question for the panelists here. Umang, to kick it off with you, what do you think organizations, regardless of their size or their scale, what can they do to prioritize and prepare themselves for this inevitability that sustainable supply chains are going to be table stakes in the future?
Two things. One, stop doing vanity projects on sustainability. I see a lot of that happening where just because companies want to talk about it or department heads want to show that I'm doing something on sustainability to get brownie points, there are vanity projects being done, money wasted on using AI where it's not needed, right? Where simpler technologies will work. So first thing, take a very hard, honest look at what kind of sustainable initiatives can you really do and what are the bare minimum technologies that you need to do it. Focus on those. Not everything needs AI. Using some very simple existing technologies like basic BI, analytics, etc. A lot can be accomplished. Of course, use AI where you need to, but be cognizant of your choices. Second, I'll come back again to data, where I see most companies step back and saying, oh, this is a massive exercise, right? And there are no incentives. So if I'm a department head, I'm a claim head in an insurance company, I'm not measured on my sustainability footprint. My measurement is my claim ratios, right? There is no one person, and at least in my experience, who's responsible for the sustainability metrics. Who's driving the business in that company, right? So I think organizations involved have to figure out what does sustainability really mean for them, for their business, tie it to their business goals, start looking at becoming ready from a data perspective, from an initiative perspective, and then actually start doing something really useful using simple technologies, not going above board just because we want to showcase something.
And that's the important part, isn't it? To be genuine and to be practical about it.
Absolutely.
AI may not be the solution to everything, and there's a very important need for businesses to, how do you say just now, suit the sustainability initiative to the business goal. The alignment is very important. Jezreel, what would you like to add on in terms of what companies can do? I like how you also mentioned about the talent readiness or the capability. Maybe something around that, do you think that companies can start working on?
I think I would like to add a bit to Umar just now. There's one report published 2-3 days ago to say that consumer report in the US, people are less to buy your product if you put AI as one of the tagline. If you put AI ready toothbrush, people will not buy that. So because AI is not that one magic ball that can solve everything, right? But yeah, on how to get ready for companies, right? I think adoption of advanced technology has to start now. Even though there is not one solution that can fit all, but you need to adopt the technology to be ready for future and to ensure your workforce is being trained to use the technology. If not, it's just another white elephant. So you have one very big Changi solution to be put in your environment. Suddenly, only 3 or 4 people know how to do that. 3-4 years down the road, 3 or 4 people resign, then that's it. So yes, and another thing that we have to be reminded that the consumer now are very, what's the word here? Very demanding. They want to know, and they need to know how you source the product, whether it's ethical, whether it use child labor, stuff like that. Hence why we need to have more transparent and sustainable supply chain to address that facade of society.
Thank you, Jezreel. AI is not a silver bullet. That's a great point. And to tie in the point that you mentioned earlier, that it's not just about the cost, it's about the change, bringing people, adopting the change and embracing that, right? And training them to coexist with this technology in the areas of sustainable supply chain. Lucas, maybe we'll wrap up the questions with your perspective. What can organizations start thinking about and doing?
I think other than the other panelists and so I wanted to take what Umang says, right, is for corporates to take a step back and look, right, in terms of example for supply chain, right, is to look at your own ecosystem, right? Take a step back and look at the ecosystem and say that where are the areas that I can actually think about a supply chain, how do you say, a strategy or management? Where do I start? Right? Do I start from the supplier side? Because if you look at the entire ecosystem, it's not only suppliers. You have, depending what business you have, you probably have sellers, distributors, dealers. Right? Do I look at this side, or do I look at both sides, or so on? Right? So you need to really understand which are the areas that you can actually look at, and then on top of it, add in the sustainability part to it. That's one. Right? Secondly, is that, like we said earlier, right? All these actually are costs, and do I have the money to finance it? If you don't have, there are actually a lot of help available, right? The government give a lot of grants, right? In Bank Negara, it has certain facility, they call it LCTF, like low carbon transition facility. They have another one called, probably more appropriate for today, they call it HTG, right? It's a high-tech green facility. So these are all the facilities available in terms of providing financing, right? And to corporates to really finance the transition, finance the step forwards and so on. So I think those are areas that everyone can actually take a look and say, can I make use of it? Can I participate? Yeah.
Thank you, Lucas. I think the instruments are there. I think the market is certainly getting more sophisticated as far as customizing or curating the instruments or mechanism to facilitate better change. It's a matter of adopting and implementing it, scaling it, essentially. Great point. Okay, we'll go to the questions from the floor, and I believe there's a few that is already on there, some of which I feel we've somewhat touched on it, or at least we've addressed that. The first one being the biggest challenge faced. What is the biggest challenge faced by SMEs in adopting sustainability, especially in their supply chains? I think, the three panelists clearly mentioned that earlier, in terms of the cost, talent availability, awareness. I'm just wondering if we just focus in on the SME lens, is there any specific nuanced challenge from an SME perspective?
I think I want to add a bit on that. I think the biggest challenge for SME when it comes to sustainability, I have to repeat, is cost. But we at MDEC have certain facility, a grant to help them embrace that. So come and talk to us. My team is there to look at how can we do that, how can we solve it together. So again, we advocate the importance of sustainability for SME, especially when you want to go out, like what Lucas mentioned. If we have our soft landing zone in Turkey, for example, you follow MDEC export team to go to Turkey to export your product. But the first thing that they're going to ask you, how are you on ESG? Are you following all the rules that set out by EU? So we need to train them. We need to let them know why sustainability is really important. It's not just for reporting to your current customer, but it's beyond that. It's for your survival.
Very good point. And I think at some point, the SMEs may be, the access of information to these SMEs may not be as wide-ranging as the larger corporates. So their understanding and awareness of these areas may not be as mature. Hence why large corporates have that responsibility to embrace them and bring them along this journey as well. Second question, how can AI-driven technologies enhance transparency and traceability in sustainable supply chains, particularly in the global network? Umang, would you like to take this one?
I can take it, yeah. So let me Very practical, no blue sky thinking. I'll give you a Malaysian company example with which I've worked, right? So there is a Malaysian pharma company with whom I've worked, and we've launched a traceability platform for vaccines. Okay? If you've read the newspapers, you will know what I'm talking about, but it's a very well-known publicized case. So it's a Malaysian company, hence I'm taking that example. Now, imagine the journey of a vaccine. The raw material comes from outside somewhere. It lands in Malaysia. It's in large containers. These are 25-liter containers. And it comes to Malaysia. And then it's converted to vials. There are strips. Each strip has 4 vials. Each of these vials are separate doses that are given to citizens. Now imagine the complex supply chain. After the manufacturing, it goes in and it's stored in a warehouse, right? A temperature controlled warehouse. It's transported through temperature controlled trucks. The trucks are not owned by the pharma company, but they are third party owned. Then it goes through multiple checkpoints. It's given to multiple distributors from where the packaging changes, right? So it's initially in large boxes, and it's repackaged into smaller cartons, and then it's given to the large pharmacy chains, and it goes to the smaller retail store. So look at the number of hands it's gone through. Okay, some of these could be dangerous drugs as well, right, which are controlled by the government. So look at the number of hands it's gone through. Now you as a citizen should be able to be convinced that this is safe, this is a genuine drug. Okay, when was it manufactured? Under what conditions was it transported? Is it healthy for me to put in my body? Right? That's what you as a consumer are looking at. Now look at the complexity of the problem, right? It's gone through so many parties. Many of them are not controlled by you. Right? Now, using simple technologies, we've used IoT. We've used a bit of blockchain here and there, but it's basic IoT. Traditional AI, no Gen AI yet, that's the next phase. Traditional AI, right? And you can use this using, I use that using Oracle technologies. You can use any open source technology. It's not very expensive. You can track the entire journey of that vaccine since the time it landed here on your shores till the time it goes in your body, okay? Using some very simple technologies. So at the end, you can actually scan the QR code or the barcode of the medicine. It will give you the journey. If there is a serious adverse reaction to a patient, then the hospital can actually scan that barcode and get the entire information. Was it a carriage issue? Which means when it was being transported in the truck, did the truck topple? Was it not transported or stored in the right temperature conditions? You can track the entire thing, right? Now you can extend that to wines. We've done that globally for olive oil, for wines, where if I'm drinking a particular wine and I know that I'm paying a premium for it, it is the genuine wine, and I'm able to track its entire journey, right? So there are a combination of technologies available using which you can do a lot of track and trace for sustainable supply chain.
Thanks, Umang. I believe we only got time for perhaps one more question. Maybe for Lucas to kick off. I think that third question is quite interesting in terms of, well, its position as, is there a dependency that Malaysia has on labor, for foreign laborers, and what is the impact to the sustainable supply chain? Perhaps, I would think it would be still relevant if we omit the word foreign laborers, right? I think it's just labor in general. Will there be an impact to adoption of sustainable supply chain, knowing that there is a dependency on, from a labor perspective?
I think that I would like to answer this in 2 parts. First part is that, the foreign labor part, right? That we use this foreign labor because at the end of the day, right, the corporates is that in certain of the processes and everything, right, that therefore you need workers to do the job, right? And these workers so happen that is foreign, right? So, and I think that before we think about sustainability, right? Firstly, think about the corporates itself that actually hires all these foreign workers, so our foreign laborers. That company, number one, before it goes on all this sustainability, ESG, and so on, right? It has to survive. It has to be make profit, right? But, you know, yesterday I attended another forum and someone talked about this, right? And it's quite interesting that I learned, right? Is that, you know, when you make profit, you're talking about profit creation, right? But importantly is that now with sustainability, you need to think about to say profit preservation for a longer term, right? So sustainability will give you that, but every company need to make profit first before you can talk about sustainability. So I think that part is one part, right? And sustainability, while is something that is for us, everyone, for the future and so on, we cannot take sustainability and say that we want sustainability and forget everything else, right? That's the second part of my answer is that, you know, think of the foreign worker. The foreign worker, he has to leave his country to come work here. His family is back there, right? He is working for survival. He has a family to feed. Why don't you start talking to him about sustainability? Right? It's not everything. Right? It's good thing that we want to do, but let's think basic first, right? Let's get the basic right first.
Great point, Lucas. Get the basics right. And what I would add on to your term profit preservation is also about value optimization. I think that needs to coexist in the world of sustainable supply chain. Ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time from the signals that I'm getting. I would just like to thank the esteemed panel that we have here, all the way to the left here, Lucas from UOB, Tengku Azrul from MDEC, and of course, Umang representing Oracle. I would like to give a quick shout out to Umang, who hobbled his way onto the stage, having injured his leg, but thank you so much for being with us today, Umang. We will still be around. I know there's further questions that some of you have shared. Do catch us if you like further clarifications. More than happy to do so. Thank you so much for your time.